So this is the very first thing I made in Blender. I wanted to lay out a desk I was going to build, and I thought it would be cool to have a 3D concept of it. So I downloaded Blender to try it out, and here I am a year later. Well, actually 2 years later. Because after I made this, I didn't touch Blender again for an entire year. So there it is. 365 days in Blender, and I was able to make this desk. Alright, so obviously I picked it back up. And I'm starting from scratch again, just starting with the basic objects in this scene. And then I just thought of or saw random things. They got me curious, how to model them. So here's a little montage of all that early stuff. So at the start, I was really just winging it, learning little techniques for whatever I was doing specifically, and that was working pretty well until I started running into the many problems produced by just winging it. So I started going through more tutorials, and I found Grant Abbitt's channel. Following his tutorials really gave me a good base to start with, I feel. I really started making models I was pretty happy with at this point. Alright, so after I went through those, I wanted to do some sort of challenge, keep things a bit more interesting, and really make 3D more of a habit. So I started doing a daily object from a random prompt, and that made it really easy to just focus on the modeling, when I already had the exact idea laid out for me. Also, if I was a minion, these would be my speakers. Now, the daily objects were going pretty smoothly until the random generator hit me with a squirrel. This was definitely the most challenging thing I had been faced with at this point. No man among the human race had ever dared sculpt a squirrel before, and here I was looking down the barrel of the gun. So I hopped into Blender, and to my surprise, I actually pulled off the impossible. I was so proud of this little squirrel. It truly was my magnum opus at this point. And then it was back to the usual, easy stuff like pencils and shopping lists for ancient vines. Nothing was going to faze me after I just walked through fire and flames with the squirrel. And then I was feeling it, and I wanted to try something pretty detailed. So I tried my best at Chung's cannon thing from this game I used to play called L-Sword. Not to be confused with Big Chungus. He was my main back in the day. I loved that game until I found out it was pay to win. See, you got this dope armor when you unlocked your class, but then after like a week or something, it would disappear and you'd be back in whatever L-Sword thrift drip that you could scrounge up. Unless you just bought more from the shop. Can you tell I'm still mad? Back in Blender, I got Grant Abbitt's sculpting course, and started working through that. And at this point, I don't think I had even went into sculpt mode in Blender at all. I really liked the sculpting workflow, so I started focusing on it more. This is where the big sculpting arc really starts. And I thought it'd be a good idea to learn to sculpt faces on cubes for some reason. Do yourself a favor and just use a sphere. Unless you're sculpting Thomas, then by all means, be my guest. And here we have a nice sculpt of the Pringles mascot. It's really going for like some sort of realistic Pringles can here. And then here you could call this my first character animation. Originally I had this synced to the hey meme. You know what I'm talking about. But I'm not trying to get my video claimed, so there's no hey meme. There's no hey meme. Whatever, dude. This dwarf character was probably my best sculpt at this point, at least with the beard on. Definitely keep the beard on. Now I wanted to try recreating a character instead of just doing like random heads. So I tried Revy from Black Lagoon. I was pretty happy with this one. It was the first time I did hair. and a little more advanced texturing type stuff. Then this wolf was really my first high poly sculpt, like actually on purpose high poly, not just accidentally, and then freezing my laptop. You know, this is where I realized my laptop couldn't handle all the Dyn Topo clown foolery that well, so. You also may have noticed this thing taking up the right-hand side of the screen. Yeah, well, this is just some cat with cheese on its head that I drew and had as an image in OBS. He's baked into the footage. Here's the start of what I'm calling the Unity game asset section. Quick side note, the footage you're seeing, I made using the Shift Tilde feature in Blender. You can do some crazy Spider-Man looking stuff if you really want to. But yeah, I had only really done a bit of Unity in the past. I hadn't done anything 3D with it though. You're probably thinking, yo, I thought this was a Blender progress video. And you'd be right, because I really didn't do that much in Unity besides just make a massive, unoptimized scene full of trees. I made this to concept the idea for this game I was going to work on with my friend. I still really like the idea and the premise of the game, and hey, who knows, maybe one day it'll become real. This was also the first time I messed around with building rigs and really like using the Rigify plugin. Here's where I got inspired by game reload animations I was watching on YouTube. And I was like, oh yeah, I can do that. And I never really got around to doing one because I realized it was difficult. Still on my bucket list though, for sure. Then I'm doing another character here, but I wanted to focus more on texturing with this one. As you can see, I just reused the hair from the Revi sculpt. Because the hair was taking quite a bit to get right, so, you know. Just reuse what you can when you can. Then I decided enough was enough. I needed to get faster. So now everything I sculpted, I was trying to go as fast as possible, and just keep going through the process. You know, really start doing more volume, more sculpts, more characters. And then it was time for the big model. That's right, a model to rival the squirrel. My first fully textured and rigged character, the whole package. But this was also where I realized, oh, I still suck. Nearly every part of the process took 4 times as long as it really needed to. I kept running into problem after problem, some parts taking weeks to figure out. It was an interesting change of pace going from speed sculpting to a grueling, nearly 3-month-long project. Before this, I hadn't really done proper retopology or UV mapping. The texturing was also a massive headache. And after all that, I figured, you know, building a completely custom rig couldn't be that bad. Well, it was. It was pretty brutal. But if I learned anything from the squirrel, it was to never give up. I had been through too much with this model to give up now. I pushed through, I finished the rig, and then I gave up. Listen, I had been staring at this model for months now, and it still had so many problems. It was just time to take the hit and move on. It was time to embark on a completely different skill and learn hard surface. What? Yes, it was time to get my hard surface skills on fleek. So I started making random bits of metal and stuff with lights and a knee pad. Really just anything to distract me from the pain. Then a turret thing with 1,000,000 holes in it to represent the hole left in my heart after abandoning my last model. And after this, I didn't touch Blender for a long time. Well, only like a month. And only because I was no-lifing WoW Classic. I did this speed sculpt of Illidan while I was sucked into the gamer vortex, however, so it wasn't a complete loss of time. But then I realized I learned so much from that model. It wasn't a failure after all, and it was time Time to get back in the saddle and get back to what I know best. Sculpting. Just plain old sculpting. Wait, how do I use this program again? And what's the perfect thing to practice sculpting on? A bunch of 3D print objects. See, the thing with 3D printed stuff is it doesn't need amazing topology or any textures. It's just pure sculpting and modeling. And this became the first major project I completely finished in my eyes. Every model here is completely prepped for 3D print. They'll be available as a set for sale. I'll leave a link to them in the description or the comments if you're interested. But after finishing those, it was time to continue the streak and go back to finish some old work. The first bit of this door footage is from like 8 months ago. That was back when I still had the cheese cat in the footage. Right about here is where I picked it up again. And when I was working on this, everything just started to click, and I could see a huge improvement. But something was still in the back of my mind. No, not that. No. I'm still mad though. No, still wrong. Right. That was it. I never finished a full model. And I wasn't gonna let it end that way. I did it. I completed a full model, but this time instead of taking nearly 3 months, it was only 2 weeks. I think it's safe to say I have finally surpassed the squirrel. Barely. So that's it. That's my first year in Blender. But it doesn't end here. Well, the video ends here. It easily could have gone on much longer. I had a year's worth of footage to edit down. But anyways, I got a lot of ideas still, and now I feel like I can properly do them. So if you want to see more, hit that subscribe button, smash that like button, and maybe even right-click the page and save it as an HTML if you're really feeling it. Alright, see ya.